This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcasting Network. I am your host today on this Tuesday edition of the show. I am Josh Strickland, and we have some more NFL talk, NFL draft talk to talk about, since the draft is on Thursday. And we'll also discuss The Last Dance. Here's our full lineup for today. We'll talk about more details on this virtual NFL draft. We're going to talk about Taiwanese Baseball, because that's the only live sport that I know of that's going on at the moment. Then after that, we'll talk about college football alignment, what ifs, and then we'll talk about The Last Dance Part 1 and 2. And then, of course, we'll top it all off with our final 10 movies off the Athletics Best Sports Movies list. But first, we're going to talk about, with the NFL draft coming up on Thursday, we're going to talk about the big one. We're going to talk about quarterbacks. We're going to compare each quarterback, which quarterback is actually the best quarterback. You have Joe Burrow versus Tua versus Herbert, and there's also Jordan Love in there, which, depending on who you talk to, that's kind of crazy that he's in there. But those are the top four quarterbacks. After that, you have Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm, Jalen Hurts, Anthony Gordon from Washington State, and Cole McDonald from Hawaii, Nate Stanley. Overall, this is a pretty decent quarterback draft class. Just the issue is a lot of teams don't need a quarterback right away. So a lot of these guys are going to get drafted in the later rounds, probably to serve a backup role. But this is a pretty quarterback heavy draft, and this is also a pretty wide receiver heavy quarterback draft. But we're gonna compare the first four, or mostly the first three, because Jordan Love just gets lumped in there because a bunch of teams really like him. We'll talk about him a little bit, but overall, a lot of teams just really like him, so that's why he's in this. So let's get into it. So Joe Burrow, let's discuss his stats. Everybody knows his year with LSU was one of the best years a quarterback can have. Of course, he had 5,671 passing yards, 60 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He had 338 rushing yards. He averaged 5 touchdowns a game, pretty much. So Joe Burrow, really good. He at Ohio State, he was an academic All-Big Ten. He broke his throwing hand in August of 2017. For LSU, he was the Fiesta Bowl MVP against UFC. He also won the Heisman Trophy, SEC Offensive Player of the Year, first team All-SEC, and he was the team captain this past year for the national championship winning LSU Tigers. So he was a number 11 recruit in the state of Ohio. He carves the defense with downfield accuracy. He delivers a natural touch and ball placement. He's very intelligent, quick to identify man or zone, understands how to use his eye level to hold defenders and create passing windows, never rattled, showing the composure to reset on the fly. He locates pressures pre-snap, adjusts his internal clock, rhythmic pocket movements to sort through the rush and maneuver type spaces. He's a creative scrambler, uses his legs to evade and move the pocket, toughness to bounce off tackle attempts. However, arm strength, he has the arm strength to work either sideline, but he's not a power thrower, and his velocity is best described as good, not great. He tends to put too much air under his deep ball, leading to underthrows. He can be caught holding the ball too long at times and needs to throw it away. He receives checks from the sidelines in college, benefited from a new scheme in 2019, which we've discussed before, that new scheme with Joe Brady. Just looking at his stats right now, he went from 2,894 yards to 2,894 yards and 16 touchdowns to 5,671 yards and 60 touchdowns. And that's just from Joe Brady being the new play caller there. So overall, ultimate competitor. He orchestrates the offense with poise, but there are issues about it. It depends really whether he gets the offense that he needs to be better there. So Tua. He started 2 full seasons with Alabama. He went in. He was the offensive MVP of the national championship game in 2017 as a freshman, as he came in in the fourth quarter and led that team into an overtime victory over Georgia. Then 2018, he played 15 games, started all 15 games. He threw for 3,966 yards in that season, 43 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Then in 2019, he only played 9 games because of that hip injury that he received, and he threw in those 9 games. He threw 71% completion percentage with 2,840 yards, 33 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He has outstanding field vision, passing instincts, and processing speed. Uses eye manipulation like a pro. He's a twitchy passer, allowing him to reset under pressure and get the ball out. He's above average accuracy with terrific touch and trajectory downfield. Excellent pocket awareness, and shows the spatial instincts to feel everything going on around him. He recognizes pressures, climbing and sliding, while keeping his eye level downfield. He's a nimble athlete with slippery ball handler, improvising well on the fly, explosive with zone read concepts due to his quick reads and smart decision-making, and complete control pre-snap, IDing pressures and orchestrating protections. Toughness isn't a question. He isn't afraid to hold the ball and take hits. Rarely appears rattled, relying on his strong Christian faith to keep his emotions balanced during games. Here's some weaknesses, though. He doesn't have a power arm, and his ball gets heavy when attempting to throw off balanced. He developed in this area over his career, but needs to continue and improve being on time with his movements and decisions. He needs to cut down on the hero plays and show better judgment to limit mistakes. Solidly built, but shorter than ideal. He's like 5'11", I think. Takes too many unnecessary hits on the body. Reliability is a bit bright red flag to his injury history in college, including 3 surgeries in an 11-month span. Underwent tightrope surgery on his left ankle in December 2018, underwent tightrope surgery on his right ankle in October 2019, and required immediate surgery after dislocating his hip in November of 2019, which is the injury that ended his college career. So, in all, obvious reliability concerns and medical feedback must come back clean, but his passing instincts to read, process, and fire are outstanding, projecting as an NFL starter who might require a partial redshirt as his hip returns to full health. Then we move on to Justin Herbert. So Justin Herbert, he played 2 full seasons for Oregon here. He played all of 2018 and all of 2019. He started 8 games. He started 7 games in 2016, 8 games in 2017. He was the first Oregon true freshman quarterback to start since 1983. He was academic All-American all 3 years. He won the Campbell Trophy in 2019. In 2019, he threw 66.8%, 3,471 yards, 32 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Just looking at his college stats, it looks like he gets moderately better every single year. So that's good for him. He's an explosive thrower, owns a quick, compact delivery, and drives the football with unforced effort. Light-footed athlete with loose body movements, which shows in the pocket and as a scrambler. Controlled yet urgent mobility to buy time as a passer. Pick up chunk yards with his long strides. Easily transfers his body weight and adjusts arm angles on the move without sacrificing accuracy. Stands tall in the pocket to climb and fire, not rushing at the first hit of pressure. Leads his receivers, I've dropped my pen, with ropes. But weaknesses, he's very intelligent but needs to process things more quickly. He has an inconsistent feel versus pressure, holds the ball way too long, needs to better burn the blitzes instead of the other way around. He gets a deer in the headlights look when the play breaks down, and that's something you can't have in the NFL, of course. He is a dynamic dual-threat passer with an elite combination of size, athleticism, and arm talent, but he must sharpen his decision-making and instincts, especially under duress, to live up to his immense potential as an NFL starter. He projects best in the heavy play-action offense that utilizes his athleticism. Then we move on to Jordan Love, who's kind of the wild card here. Jordan Love, he started 2 full years for Utah State, 2018 and 2019. In those 2 years, in 2018, he had 64% completion with 3,556 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. But then in 2019, he had 62% completion, 3,402 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions, which is insanity. He's a loose passer with special arm talent, effortless load, and release delivery. Looks like he's throwing a Nerf football, efficient feet, fluid lower body to climb, slide, and move the pocket. But he is a stubborn decision maker, locking onto preferred targets, disrupting the timing of the play. Needs to improve his keys pre and post snap to make the proper reads. Defenders track his eye. His internal clock lacks maturity, allowing the pocket to close in on him. Inconsistent base mechanics, often fading away from throws. Bad habit of throwing low on outbreaking routes, and he's still very raw as a passer. His inconsistent decision-making is a concern, but he has an immense high-ceiling talent that is ready to be cultivated, projecting as a high-risk, high-reward NFL prospect. So there's pretty much a nice little breakdown of all four quarterbacks. In my opinion, I still think Tua is the best quarterback in the draft, but Joe Burrow will get drafted first just because of his past year, and he's, like we mentioned, he's quick decision maker. He's got a great arm and stuff like that, so he's going to get drafted first. But I personally believe Tua is going to be better long term if he is still healthy. So we'll see how that turns out all on Thursday. When we return, we'll talk about the virtual NFL draft, what some team executives are saying about it, and just overall more details on how it's going to be working when we return.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So the NFL draft, the 2020 NFL draft, it will be completely virtual. Teams will be in their different pods of either whatever communication app they're going to be using, and then they'll call in their pick. Basically, it could be considered a throwback to a simpler time, a stripped down affair with no fan congregations, no cards with handwritten names, no green room, and no commissioner hugs. It'll be kind of like a 1967 again, when you had a couple of guys in a room and they call the league with their pick. One veteran front office executive said. But with the virtual draft also could be the preview of tomorrow's drafts, relying on technology like never before, with internet connectivity at its foundation. Most teams will have about 50 people logging on from their homes and connected to one another remotely. And about 10 of those also will be connected to the NFL. I don't know what just happened there. I'm sorry. I got quick hiccups out of nowhere. Sorry. ESPN and NFL Network will reshare the broadcast feed, which will primarily be an ESPN production. For remote hookups, 58 prospects were sent iPhones, lights, and microphones, as well as instructions on how to use them. Between the players, fans, and NFL personnel, the league will be utilizing well over 150 remote feeds at once, according to Michelle McKenna, the NFL's chief information officer, who is overseeing the tech aspects of the draft. In the past, that number has been about 10. So that's, just quite a jump from 10 to 150. It's just a little jump. One of the most noticeable changes to the draft could be its pace, which is notoriously pokey. Teams will still have the same amount of time allotted for each pick as in the past. So 10 minutes for the first round, 7 minutes the second round, 5 minutes the third through sixth rounds, and then 4 minutes in the seventh round. But concerns about technological breakdowns should speed up that process. So McKenna, who joined the NFL 8 years ago after working for Disney and Universal, said, what we've told them is if you know who you are picking, there's no reason to build the drama to the last second. We certainly encourage them to be as swift as they can be, which is helpful for the broadcast just in general, because good God, sometimes the picks in the NFL draft take way too long, especially the number one pick, because we know who they're picking. Like, they might be fielding trades, maybe, but at the end of the day, we know who they're going to pick. And if you're going to trade that person, then you should have already done it. I mean, I'm just saying. So that is strange. But I think that's a positive. But in many ways, what is happening to the draft is a drastic change. Change can be unsettling, especially for some old school NFL thinkers who have proven to be very strong about being pushed into the 21st century. So, Falcons president Rich McKay had this to say: "We're all respectful of the circumstances and how challenging the time is. It's not like what we're getting ready to do compared to that, but it is different for us, totally different. You have moved the cheese for all of these individuals who have a pattern of how they get ready for a draft. I'm mindful of how challenging this is for general managers, coaches, personal staffs, and I know the pressure those decision makers feel, and this year will be different from any other year." So initial plans call for the draft to be in Las Vegas, and it was going to be an extravaganza beyond any previous NFL production. Stage would have been set up on the fountains outside the Bellagio Hotel. Players were going to be ferried back and forth on boats, which is still absurd to me. I'm glad that's not happening. But now there is no physical nerve center for the draft. Under normal circumstances, every team would make their selection from the draft room in its facility. After all team facilities closed on March 26th, the Saints were setting up a draft room from a local brewery. Other teams had discussions with hotels about renting ballrooms or boardrooms. Eventually, Goodell told teams that draft rooms anywhere would not be possible. Team decision makers will be working separately out of their own homes, which has created some unusual challenges beyond curious toddlers and terriers. Redskins coach Ron Rivera had to commandeer his daughter Courtney's workstation in the basement because he didn't have a home office. According to his team's website, Bears general manager Ryan Pace had to move his setup from the basement to the dining room because the Wi-Fi signal is more powerful on the main floor. Ravens general manager Eric DaCosta said he enhanced the power capacity of his home generator in the event of a power outage. He also added a printer, a small television, and extra monitors to his workstation. So most primary decision makers on teams were advised to have 2 landlines installed in their homes if they didn't have any. Colts GM Chris Ballard told reporters he had a second wireless network installed for backup. Cameras also have been placed in many home stations, some for the ESPN broadcast feed and some for the internal team use. Falcons general manager Thomas Dimitroff told NBC Sports that team owner Arthur Blank will be able to watch him throughout the draft through one of the cameras in his home, which that is terrifying in my opinion. But this will be the draft for the Generation Z, with everyone staring into screens. There is no denying the uniqueness of the physical separation, says Colts coach Frank Reich. But we're taking the approach. It won't present any challenges. It can't. We have to overcome those. You have to find a way to do that. Most general managers and some head coaches have had their team's IT specialists work on their setups. Some were concerned about having technicians enter their homes because they did not want to risk exposure to COVID-19. McKenna said outside assistance has not been a requirement. Rams CEO Kevin Demoff, speaking to reporters in a conference call, noted that younger employees who share apartments might face challenges that those living with their families in larger homes might not. We're working through that process, making sure that they have the ability to work in quiet spaces to get work done from home. So during the draft, every team will be connected to the league through Microsoft Teams as well as WebEx. The selections are expected to be made through Microsoft Teams, usually by the general manager. In the event of a glitch, teams can also make picks by phoning NFL personnel director Ken Fiore or a member of his staff. Additionally, every team will be connected to the league on a conference call that will last the entirety of the draft. Selections can be announced by the team on a conference call as well. Most organizations have established a chain of command with multiple possible selectors, each of whom has been credentialed with the league. Where it gets interesting is how teams will communicate internally. Each is free to use the application of its choice for communication between owners, general managers, coaches, scouts, and others. Team employees have spent considerable time familiarizing themselves with technology that will be used during the draft. In recent weeks, some teams interviewed more than 100 players using Zoom or other applications. Reich said the Colts used multiple apps during player interviews to get a feel for each. Some may use Zoom during the draft, but Zoom has encountered security breaches in recent weeks, so we have concerns, so we're not using Zoom, an NFC personnel director said. Other possibilities include Microsoft Teams, WebEx, Skype, and FaceTime. The NFL has not steered teams toward particular apps for internal communication. We know the top 3 or 4 things people want to use, and we've gone through it with them and made sure they have made it as safe as possible. But it varies by club, and we didn't want to dictate that. We let each team have their own secret sauce. So some teams are hesitant to divulge how they will communicate because they are seeking edges over the competitors. If this is a 10-foot wall, everybody's first 5 feet are going to look pretty much the same. One top-level executive said after that it changes. The question is, if you try to get ambitious and use more tech, how much will you do? And are you willing to risk having it fail? NFC personnel director will have 2 screens for communicating. One will allow him to speak with his owners, general manager, head coach, and salary cap director. The other screen will enable interaction with the scouting staff and assistant coaches. So Pace said he will have 2 monitors for video, a Microsoft Surface tablet with all of his reports, his team scouting database, and its Skype interviews, and an iPad. I've actually seen a picture. A lot of people are clowning the Giants general manager because he's doing it very old school. He has like this gigantic binder filled with paper, and he only has like 1 laptop. Meanwhile, you have some of these other guys who have like billions of 5 monitors or something like that, and then they also have the TV on. So a lot of teams are taking this different. Some teams are still in their old school ways. Some teams are trying to embrace this new opportunity here. College scouting director said he will have a screen with a countdown timer on it. Some teams have a screen for shared draft board that shows selections in real time. Every executive also plans on having a television feed. Many will have backups that are not technologically reliant. Reich has a paper backup of his draft notes and reports. Raiders general manager Mike Mayock told reporters he has 5 large whiteboards in his living room with magnets representing 1,000 players. That is insanity. That's just crazy to think about. Oh my gosh. GMs and head coaches were asked to provide the league information on their internet and cell phone providers. Internet speeds subsequently, I butchered that word so hard, have seen, tested, and in some cases boosted. During the draft, spouses might be discouraged from streaming Tiger King, and the kids might have to forsake playing Fortnite, as the league has cautioned team executives about others in the house using too much bandwidth, which could slow down internet speed. There is so much more details in this article, but I am out of time on this segment. But it is insane how many different things that these different. It's kind of interesting actually to see what different things each team is doing to kind of like get an edge on the competition. But when we come back, we'll talk about my new favorite pastime, which is Taiwanese baseball.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So let me lay this down for you guys. I'm not just waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning just to watch Taiwanese baseball. But Taiwanese baseball, they do play at like 5 o'clock in the morning, or in the East Coast time. If you're on the West Coast, then it would be like 2 o'clock in the morning, which I think that's a lot more doable than 5 o'clock in the morning. You just stay up. But let me just say, I work a job at a news station, and I have to edit the morning shows on the weekends. So on the weekends, I am there from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. on the weekends. So because of that, I have a lot of free time. I mean, I work on the show. I do shows. I record a show here, but the no sports thing, because my plan was to rewatch games and stuff like that, so I can be more in tune with the overall sports world. But I mean, I started working that job when the COVID-19 started getting a lot more menacing, and people stuff started shutting down. So once sports got shut down, I was just like, well, shoot, what am I going to do here? But now we have Taiwanese Baseball, which is on at 5 o'clock in the morning. I can watch it on the weekends because it's on other days other than the weekend, but it is on during the weekends most of the time, and it is at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I watch the Rakuten Monkeys versus some other team. I forgot, but this is the CPBL, where there's only 5 teams. And I'm cheering for the Rakuten Monkeys because they were the first team I saw. But and also monkeys. I mean, why not? But it's just so the coronavirus pandemic has shut down almost every sports league around the globe. 5-team CPBL is one of the few exceptions. For fans craving baseball, it is the only option. Those who helped it make it happen have approached the venture as a mission to provide the world with a much-needed diversion. The games are being contested before empty seats, except for cheer squads. Yes, cheer squads, which means like cheerleaders, mascots. These people are still there dancing on top of dugouts and stuff like that for some reason. They are still there. I don't know why. Don't know how. I mean, I know how, but I mean, why are they still here? What are we doing here? But they're still there. There's cardboard cutouts standing in for fans, which is insanity. There's noise-making robots that have been programmed to bang drums. Yeah, they have robots playing drums, which is insane. It's a bizarre but passable approximation of the game as it once existed. So baseball is defined by long breaks in the action, and within the context of a marathon season. It's hard to enjoy it from afar without the connection of familiar navigators, like, you know, the basic commentators that you listen to baseball with. But Taiwanese Baseball, they have 2 guys who are broadcasting pretty much every game, and they have to broadcast it to a completely new audience. But on Friday night in Taipei, or 7 a.m. in the U.S. East Coast, the Rakuten Monkeys and the Fubon Guardians of the other team, played the opener of a 3-game set. 11 Sports Taiwan, which is the company that has been broadcasting these games, live streamed the game on Twitter, which is where I watched it. It drew more than 1 million views, the majority of which came from the U.S. I couldn't sleep, said McNeil, who saw the numbers after calling the game. It's surreal. It was especially strong turnout for a game that wasn't even originally scheduled to be carried in English. The network initially planned to broadcast only the season opening series between the Rakuten Monkeys and the Uni President Lions. The 2-game set had been slated for the previous weekend, but rains pushed the series back to Wednesday. The shift created a stretch of 5 straight games. Sensing an opportunity, Simone Kang, managing director of 11 Sports Taiwan, expanded coverage to all 5 games, but it's unclear what comes next. Kang wrote in an email on Saturday that we might not be able to continue providing English language service after this Sunday, as the service is an extra cost to us, the host broadcaster. But again, we are doing our best to find support. So the broadcasts have been part baseball, part travelogue. Blending the two has created an effect that is alternately familiar and intriguing. There are plenty of staples. More than once, McNeil has implored the kids watching at home to pay attention to certain fundamentals. He has admired opposite field single with the obligatory good piece of hitting. Meanwhile, Wang, the other commentator, has spoken with an authority earned through his deep knowledge of the league and its players. The duo has explained the elements that differentiate Taiwanese baseball. The stretch, for instance, comes in the 5th inning, not the 7th. Teams aren't named for cities, but for corporations, as you can tell from Rakuten, which is a e-commerce website or something like that. During one broadcast, McNeil recalled attending one of his first games upon moving to Taiwan. As is typical in the U.S. or Canada, he had a few beers and heckled a few players. Wang gasped on air during the telling. Both explained that alcohol isn't generally part of the ballpark experience. Neither is ragging on the players. McNeil learned his lesson when security arrived and threatened him with an ejection. Another difference is the way the game is regarded in general. Enjoyment, McNeil said, is dependent less on winning and losing, more for the experience. We have our family, we cheer, we sing songs, and then we go home, McNeil said. It's very different from that point of view. People don't really get angry. If the Monkeys lose, you see people walking out with smiles on their face because they had a good time at the ball game, which that's absurd. You can't have that. Beyond the baseball traditions, the broadcasts have served as something of an introduction to Taiwan as a whole. McNeil spent time during one game, marveling about the natural beauty of the eastern side of the island. Wang exuded clear pride in the government's rapid response to the pandemic, which led directly to being able to stage baseball games, even as other leagues have been forced to shut down. More than once in their booth at an empty baseball stadium, Wang turned to McNeil and expressed his hope that fans will be allowed to return to the stands this season. Then he said new viewers to the league would gain a true sense of Taiwanese baseball, complete with the drums, the trumpets, the songs sung from the first pitch right through to the final out. We have smaller stadiums, and on a very good day, we're probably going to have maybe 10 to 11,000 people in here. Now imagine all 10,000 people singing the same song and chanting at the same time. It's very different. It's very electrifying. So this is very interesting. If you want to tune in, if you can't sleep or you just wake up super early, if you want to tune in to Taiwanese baseball, it is the best way to kind of get the sense of what baseball without a crowd looks like. I've seen a lot of people claim that spring training games was a good enough comp because there's not a lot of people at spring training games, but I think that's wrong. I mean, there's still people there. Having a crowd with zero people is very strange. They're still playing music. They still have the PA announcer and stuff like that. It is a very good look at what the future of the MLB is going to look like, because this is what the MLB is going to look like here in a little bit, because if the MLB does play a season, it is going to be in front of no fans. That we've already pretty much discussed that right now, because if we play a season, it's going to be with no fans at all. So it was interesting to watch. There was one American player randomly, Bonilla. He was pitching. Apparently he was pitching his second game in 3 days or something like that, which is not recommended in baseball, but whatever. But it was baseball. Yeah, their style's a little different because they all kind of go for hits instead of dingers all the time. But it was interesting to watch, and it was in a live sport. It was a live sport, a sport that actually had stuff going on, actually had consequences, actually had, things going on. So that alone was a plus. But I don't see myself waking up for it. I recommend everybody watching it at least once, but I'm not going to wake up for it every single time it's on. But I'm going to watch it at work when I'm already awake and I have to stay awake. So I will watch it then. But other than that, it's pretty exciting. It's also absurd to see the mascot and the cheerleaders just all dancing on the dugout, even though there's no crowd. That is pretty strange. But other than that, it's baseball. If you really need that baseball kick, you have that there for you. If you really need it. But when we return, we'll talk about some what ifs for college football realignment, because every couple years or so we have some college football realignment. So we'll talk about some what ifs about that. It's an ESPN article where a bunch of their writers go over some what ifs, and I'll discuss how interesting or not interesting that would be, and then we'll start with that when we come back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Since the beginning of time, there has always been college football realignment talk, and during this pandemic, there is no different. There's no difference. There's no difference to people who want to bring up conference realignment. Now, this is a completely different scenario, though. This is about alternate realities in college football. I found this article on ESPN where there's a bunch of ESPN writers. They talk about they just have a little discussion about conference realignment, what ifs. So I thought it was interesting to bring up on the show because conference realignment is always a touchy subject for some people, and it is always an interesting topic to talk about because there's so many possibilities with conference realignments and what could have been. So first off, we're going to start off. People forget this now, but in 2010, we were all asking ACC Commissioner John Swofford questions about his league's chances of survival. So at the time, it seemed like the Big East was in the power position, but and the ACC was kind of down and out. This was before FSU. This was before Florida State kind of went on that rampage in the early 2010s. Clemson became a solid team in 2011. That's when Clemson started their whole campaign there. And the Big East, they had Louisville, they had Pittsburgh, they had West Virginia. The Big East was looking to be a powerhouse conference. They were looking to be the power conference, and the ACC was about to go away because there was rumors that the Big 12 was going to take Clemson and Florida State away from the ACC, which if that happened, then the ACC is basically just the Big East at that point. But of course, everything kind of reversed on them. They fell asleep or something like that, and the ACC picked apart, got Louisville, got Pittsburgh and stuff like that, and West Virginia went to the Big 12. What if Pac-12 Commissioner Larry Scott pulled off his Big 12 pillage and created a super conference with Texas, Oklahoma, and more? The Big 12 would no longer exist. The Pac-12 would be in completely different light. Would there be more super conferences? How would that all work geographically and financially? What if Notre Dame had bought the Big Ten's pitch to join the league as a full member in the 90s? Big Ten pursued Notre Dame in 94 and again in 99. It was a quick no the first time and a fairly quick no the second time. But if Notre Dame joins the Big Ten, does the Big Ten even pursue Nebraska, who used to be in the Big 12, or set off a major national realignment in 2010 when they got Rutgers? That's so the Pac-12 thing. That was never going to happen. That was always so Texas always used realignment as a power play because Texas is very much still the moneymaker in the Big 12, no matter how down and out they seem to be. But and they always threaten to leave. That's why we have a Longhorn network. That's why ESPN has a Longhorn network, because Texas leveraged their power over that conference to get their own television network. It's really stupid, to be honest, but they always leverage leaving and realignment as a way to get stuff that they want. So that was never going to happen. What if Florida State joined the SEC instead of the ACC in 1991? They had flirted with the SEC since the 1950s, but their efforts were often blocked by in-state rival Gators. FSU recently received an SEC invitation in 1990, but the Seminoles elected to join the basketball-centric ACC instead. Would FSU have had much success in the SEC? Would Bobby Bowden still have pulled off his dynasty with 2 national championships and 14 straight top 5 finishes? Bowden told ESPN's Paul Feinbaum in 2015 that he preferred the ACC over the SEC because there was an easier path to winning a national title. I felt that it was too difficult to win through the SEC to win a national championship, he said. I felt like our best route would be to go through the ACC, and that did prove to be correct. I don't know if we could have made it through the SEC. So Florida State joined the SEC. The 2 biggest teams in the ACC, regardless of record right now, you have Clemson and Florida State. Those are the 2 big dogs in the ACC. They always will be, no matter how down FSU is. They are still going to be considered historically a big dog in the ACC. So both of them had chances to go to the SEC. The SEC actually invited Clemson over in the early 90s, I think, before they invited South Carolina over. Clemson turned them down. Then they got South Carolina, and then they asked Clemson again, but South Carolina vetoed it later. Florida State going to the SEC, I agree, they probably would not have had as easy as a time, but I still think those Florida State teams were really freaking good in the 90s, so I think they would still I mean, they already played Florida those years, and Florida was the biggest competition in the SEC, I believe. So, I mean, I don't really see them, having that much of an issue with it, but whatever. The poaching of Maryland and Rutgers allowed the Big Ten to establish a beachhead on the East Coast. What if Jim Delaney has succeeded in his sales pitch to Georgia Tech and convinced the Yellow Jackets to leave the ACC? The Big Ten would have set anchor in Atlanta, national capital of college football. The league would be able to recruit more in its biggest treasure chest talent in the country, and Ohio State fans would have learned the pleasures of a chili dog at the varsity. I've actually never knew this was a thing. I didn't know Georgia Tech was being might have left. I didn't know that was a thing. I don't really think that would have helped the Big Ten that much because, I mean, Georgia Tech would have already been on kind of the downfall. I think their last good season was 2014. I think that was their last good season. So they would have already been on the downfall there or reaching their peak. I don't know if the Big Ten revenues would have helped. I also think Georgia Tech's triple option back then would not work in the Big Ten as well because those teams played Army, they played Navy. They were kind of more used to the triple option and stuff like that. And also they have bigger lines, offensive line and defensive line. And I don't think Georgia Tech's recruiting would have improved from the jump from the ACC to the Big Ten. So not really much improvement for Georgia Tech, which makes sense why they didn't go through with it. Let's see. Let's look back at ACC's decision to add Louisville over UConn in 2014. At the time, there was a strong case for the Huskies. ACC was gaining a stranglehold on Northeast TV market with Boston College and Syracuse, but the Big Ten's addition of Rutgers and Maryland altered that dynamic. UConn wasn't that far removed from respectability either, having won 8 games or more 6 times from 2003 through 2010. Of course, the ACC has never been shy about prioritizing basketball, and UConn's addition would have been a boon for schools like Pitt, Syracuse, and BC. That was the fear among the football-focused faction of the league back then. But the ACC went the other way, adding Louisville instead. It was the right call. The ACC got Lamar Jackson, carved out a niche in the Midwest, while UConn has utterly imploded, losing 9 or more games 6 times in 7 years. The Huskies are now without a football home after the school departed the American Athletic Conference to focus on basketball in the Big East. So this was a huge thing when realignment was going on. It was between UConn and Louisville, like I just stated. But it was between UConn and Louisville, and it was basically down in the ACC. It was basically down like, what do you care about more? Do you care about basketball more, or do you care about football more? And at the end of the day, it went to football because football makes more revenue. And adding Louisville was the smart idea, of course. However, I mean, if you added UConn, their football program wouldn't have imploded, I believe. And, I mean, it probably wouldn't have been, great. It would probably be like a middling ACC team, which is a majority of them, which that's where Louisville was for the past couple of years. But Louisville's going to be coming back up now with that new coach. But, yeah, I mean, I believe that was the right decision. What if Penn State would have been accepted into the Big East in 1982? Imagine a league with Penn State, Pittsburgh, Miami, Virginia Tech, and West Virginia, and a backyard brawl for a conference game. Then Penn State was rejected by the league with a 5-3 vote. Joe Paterno at the time was also trying to form some sort of an Eastern Conference. Would the addition of Penn State actually have made the Big East care more about football than basketball, or would fate be fulfilled and Penn State would eventually split to a more lucrative and stable Big Ten in 1990 anyway? So, I didn't know this was a thing either. So, if Penn State joined the Big East, they would pretty much be the football power there. I mean, you have Miami. The Penn State-Miami games, first off, would have been a great battle. Pitt was pretty good back then, I'm pretty sure. West Virginia was okay back then. But Penn State and Miami by themselves probably would have made that more of a football conference, just in general. It's really sad because if you watched, there's a really good documentary on ESPN about the fall of the Big East. But it's really sad watching that because it is very clear that all they had to do was just make a quick pivot to football, and the Big East football conference would have been fine. Big East basketball, however, I think Big East basketball died because they tried to pivot to football too late. Something like that. But, yeah, so there you go. There's some what-ifs and conference realignment, and just a quick little fun discussion there. When we return, we'll talk about The Last Dance, Part 1 and 2. We'll be reviewing The Last Dance Part 1 and 2 when we come back.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
So we finally had it in the sports-starved world. We finally had it. We had something that was live that nobody's ever seen before, and everybody was watching at the same time. It was quite magical going through my Twitter feed with everybody watching and reacting to everything that was being presented in this documentary. I mean, first off, it's a documentary, so everything's pretty much already well known. I mean, there's going to be like some minor things, like some like backstage things that nobody really knew because, I mean, this footage never been released. But things like the Scottie Pippen thing, the Jordan rise, and stuff like that, that's already well documented. So it's very interesting to see everyone react on Twitter. I miss that aspect of sports in general. I miss watching people pretty much live tweet sporting events and live memeing, making memes out of sporting events. Like, you know, as soon as something happens, you know for a fact, like, Twitter's going to make fun of that for like the next week. And then you go on Twitter and everybody's making fun of it. It's a great feeling to be part of that discussion and be interested in that stuff. So it was great seeing all of that happen once again. It was great being part of that once again. I really miss it. It's only been like a month. It's been just over a month. It's been like a month and 10 days. It's been 40 days, something like that. Jesus. But anyways, of course, here's my quick review of the two parts. I think it was very well done just for two parts. This was 2 hours long. Part one was an hour, part two was an hour, and that's how each part is going to be. But they're only an hour long. Each episode's only an hour long, but it felt like a full-on documentary. Like, it's going to be tough for this to beat the OJ documentary. That's just one of the most well-made documentaries of all time, sports or not. It's going to be tough to beat the OJ documentary. But we are 2 parts in, and I am fully engrossed. I didn't even know an hour went by when the first episode ended. I saw the credits scene, and I was like, oh, well, I guess that's it. I guess it's been an hour. And then the second episode started right away. But this definitely proved my point from Sunday, where Michael Jordan has just this essence around him, this mystique about him that's very hard for like LeBron James or any other player in history to really reach, because you have people who lived through this time period with Michael Jordan. Like my dad, he was telling me that Michael Jordan, it was insane watching Michael Jordan play, and then he watched the documentary and he was like, oh man, it's like he still had the same feelings about how great Michael Jordan was. It was crazy. But first episode started with Michael Jordan's roots, from his humble beginnings in Wilmington, North Carolina, to his early days with the Bulls. Michael Jordan didn't hold back and sit down interviews, which he granted 3 to assist with the film's creation. He granted 3 interviews to assist with the film's creation. The second episode then gets into the story of his longtime running mate, Scottie Pippen. So basically what the documentary is doing right now is trying to set the opening stage for these characters. That's what the director of the documentary said. He wants to set an opening stage. So, of course, you have to talk about Michael. And that's probably the best part one of a series you can do, is start with Michael Jordan. I mean, obviously you have to start with Michael Jordan. Then you start with Scottie Pippen. You do Scottie Pippen in episode 2. Now you've laid out the groundwork. I mean, here's the drama with Scottie Pippen. This is going to be the main drama throughout the whole season, pretty much, with Scottie Pippen only getting paid $20 million for 8 years, which is bonkers. How does that happen? What are you doing, Scottie? What are you doing? To be fair, I mean, contracts weren't as lucrative back then, but I mean, geez, that's an all-time steal of a contract. But they go through him and his contract and his injury stuff. That was very interesting because I didn't know a lot of that stuff happened. I didn't realize that. I knew that Scottie Pippen had a falling out with the Bulls during the season, but I didn't realize it was all that was going on. And then you see Michael Jordan, competitive Michael Jordan, in practice, in games. He's yelling at people. He's cursing at people. He is trying to get the best out of his teammates because the Bulls start out pretty slow. You don't have Scottie Pippen. And it's basically just Michael Jordan carrying the team again. Like he did in his early years, and he didn't want to go through that again. I think going through the early years of the Bulls, now that I'm on the subject, was also very interesting. His story about finding a hotel room full of cocaine and women was hilarious. And then you go into that second year when he broke his foot or something, and he made the playoffs. The Bulls made the playoffs when he played like 18 games with only 14 minutes in each game, and made the playoffs to play against one of the all-time great Celtics teams with Larry Bird, and he's put up 61 points, and they lost. So that alone, I mean, I've seen a lot of arguments on Twitter. People are saying that LeBron would never lose in the first round of the playoffs and stuff like that. And I'm just sitting here just like, LeBron's never had to play the all-time great Celtics team with Larry Bird. Like, you guys, like, people are straight up disrespecting Larry Bird on Twitter, and I can't handle it. I mean, basically, the way I can put it is that's basically like LeBron playing the Lakers in the first round when he's a rookie. Like, you think LeBron's going to beat the Lakers in the first round of the playoffs? No, it was just a bad draw. I mean, I could look up LeBron's first round matchups in the playoffs. I might do that for Thursday's episode. But anyways, but yeah, so I mean, facing an all-time great Celtics team with Larry Bird, putting up 61 points, gaining the respect of Larry Bird, gaining the respect of Magic Johnson, all that stuff. It was very interesting to see that his college coach told him to go pro. Straight up told him to go pro. You don't see that nowadays. He wanted what was best for Michael, and I saw a lot of NBA players on Twitter say that's a coach you want, because I mean, obviously a lot of college coaches want to keep their jobs, but I mean, if you're an all-time great coach like Michael Jordan's coach was, then you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, I thought it was insane how much trash they were talking about the general manager. They straight up just called him short to his face, like, every single time. It was insane. I mean, I understand the animosity towards him because he made a really dumb decision, in my opinion, to tell Phil Jackson, hey, this is your last year. That just drives me insane, because Phil Jackson then went on to the Lakers and won two more championships. No, 4 more championships, something like that. He went on to win more championships for the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq. I mean, I don't understand that. And then you lost Michael Jordan because of that, and Scottie Pippen was leaving. I mean, they were fully on rebuilding. I've never seen that before. I've never seen a team win 5 championships in 6 years, 5 championships in 6 or 7 years, and then just blow everything up. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I understand that there's contract disputes with Scottie Pippen. There was issues with Michael Jordan. There was issues with Phil Jackson, I guess. But that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me at all. So seeing into what the GM how the GM was handling everything was also very interesting to me. Just a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, it's going very in-depth. I mean, it's a 10-part series. They have the time to go very in-depth in this team. So it's very, very interesting. It's very well made as well. But yeah, it was a good one. And it's going to keep us occupied for 4 more weeks as episodes 3 and 4 are on this Sunday. Then you have 5, 6 after that, and then 7, 8, and then 9, 10. I think this next episode is going to have the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons, and them trying to kill Michael Jordan. So that's going to be fun to watch. Man, it's just so nice to have something to talk about. You know, it's nice to see people on Twitter excited about something. Again, everyone watching the same thing. That's the one thrill of sports. That's what keeps cable television alive. That thrill of sports where everybody gets to watch the same thing at the same time and no one's really spoiled or anything. So, anyways, when we come back, we'll talk about the top 10 movies, the final 10 movies of the Athletics Top 100 Sports Movies list when we return.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are here in the final 10 movies of the Athletics Top 100 Sports Movies. We have gone through a lot of movies that I've never heard of before. We've gone through a lot of movies I haven't seen before, and very few movies I have actually seen. But I can tell you that I believe 8 out of 10 of these movies I have seen in this top 10 list. So, I'll try to have an actual discussion about it. It's gonna be difficult, but we'll figure it out. But I just want to thank you everybody for listening through this whole series. I mean, it's been, I guess, 10 days, 10 or 11 days, in a row that we've been doing this, and I need to figure out something new to talk about, which that's actually going to be Thursday's topic. Thursday's topic is just going to be 10 minutes of me rambling, trying to figure out a new topic to talk about every day. So I think Tuesday, well, I'll discuss it on Thursday. I think Tuesdays are going to be the Michael Jordan doc until that's over, so that saves me some time there. But anyways, let's get into it. Number 10, Major League, 1989, average rating of 89.24. My favorite baseball movie of all time, Major League, is a perfect blend of comedy and sports action with a fantastic Randy Newman song, Burn On, leading off. You gotta have a great scorer to be a great sports movie. This one was done by James Newton Howard. Jake Taylor's stalking scenes haven't aged well, but otherwise it still plays. Teams are put together to lose all the time now, and Rachel Phelps might as well have been Jeffrey Loria. 500 viewings later, I still get goosebumps watching the one-game playoff with the Yankees, and hey, that's where I first learned about Babe Ruth's called shot. A key to this movie's success is the actors actually seem like ball players and coaches. Next time you watch, notice how they don't cut away from Charlie Sheen when he pitches. The dialogue is top-notch, never corny, and as the most repeatable lines in any sports movie. Try watching any old baseball game and not saying, just a bit outside, tried the corner and missed, in your Bob Uecker voice. Lines like, we got uniforms and everything, it's pretty great. This guy here is dead, cross him off then. I say, F you, Japu. I do this myself, are etched into my brain forever. Let us never mention the sequels. That's John Greenberg, Chicago editor-in-chief. This is definitely one of the best baseball movies of all time. Major League, it is hilarious. It is very true to the sport of baseball just in general. And I mean, it's just a great story. I mean, it's the generic sports story where it's just a team of losers and then they all of a sudden become competitors because of something or another. But I mean, it is a generic, is pretty much as generic as sports movies come nowadays. But back then, I mean, it was pretty much new on the block. And it's just funny. It's got Charlie Sheen. It's got a great cast around him. So, and like he said, I mean, they do act like baseball players and baseball coaches and stuff like that. So, number 8, we have a tie for number 8. We have When We Were Kings, 1996, with the average rating of 89.28, arguably the greatest sports documentary of all time. The footage and access is captivating as the film takes you behind the scenes of Muhammad Ali's journey to become a 2-time heavyweight champion versus George Foreman and the following he cultivated in Zaire along the way, showing the kind of icon the greatest was. So I haven't seen this one. It's a documentary about Muhammad Ali, though, and I've been more interested in Muhammad Ali lately because ESPN showed Muhammad Ali boxing matches just the other day. So I'm a little bit more interested in Muhammad Ali right now. I just got kind of occupied by the Michael Jordan documentary, which was another all-time great documentary about an all-time great that I had to watch. So, anyways, and then the other one tied for 8 is O.J. Made in America, 2016. Average rating of 89.28. Let's face it, the O.J. Simpson trial is the definitive sports story of our generation, and it deserved to be told in a documentary that was as detailed and as well researched as O.J. Made in America. The grisly details of the double murder in Brentwood had never been shown to the American public like this before, and I was shocked at some of the reveals in the film. From the crime scene photographs to the racist rant caught on tape, the entire production was nothing short of mesmerizing. With a total runtime of 7 hours, 47 minutes, it's the longest film to ever win an Oscar. It took Best Documentary Feature in 2016, but honestly, I wish it was 77 hours or more. So this is the documentary about O.J. Simpson. I mentioned it in the last segment where The Last Dance is going to be tough to beat O.J. Simpson's documentary, and basically it's probably not going to beat it because the O.J. Simpson documentary just has the aspect of the murder, about crime and stuff like that. And the fact of the matter is, if you listen to podcasts like you listen to this, you know there's a lot of crime stories, a lot of stories like that on podcasts. I mean, people are into this stuff. People are into crime scenes and how stuff happened and all this terrible things. So this film is probably going to be higher rated than Last Dance no matter what happens. But anyways, this is a great, oh my god, it has so much detail. I mean, each episode's like an hour, no, each episode's like, there's 5 parts, I believe, and each one's an hour and a half, I think. It goes hard. I mean, it just does. I mean, it goes from the first episode, which describes everything, like explains why OJ was such a big deal, big star, like his college career, his pro career, then his movie career. Then it goes into the murder. Then it goes into the trial and everything around the trial and stuff like that. It is so in detail, in depth. It is fantastic. If you haven't watched it, this is a must-watch documentary for a sports fan, especially if you are interested in OJ when you see his random tweets. God, his random tweets. Lord. Anyways, 7, Breaking Away, 1979, average rating of 89.32. Writer Steve Teschik's 1979 love letter to Bloomington, Indiana, and the Little 500 race is one of the great coming-of-age movies of its era, gorgeously filmed with terrific performances. It's impossible to watch the film and not want to pick up a bicycle. So, never seen that one. I'm assuming... I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that one. So, number 6, this one kind of threw me off, to be honest. The Big Lebowski, 1998, average rating of 89.45. Coen brothers were coming off Fargo, their visceral and darkly comedic breakout that became a true Oscar contender. So, of course, their next film was about 3 guys in 1992 Los Angeles who lived to bowl. Nobody really got it at the time, including me, but the dude, Walter, and Donnie have aged like fine wine, delivering some of the most quotable lines in comedy in the last 25 years. And if people deny it's a sports movie, just remember the scene where the dude and Walter botched the ransom money handoff, and all Walter can thing to say is, F it, dude, let's go bowling. So they're considering this as a bowling movie. That's a bit of a stretch. I mean, they do bowl in the movie. Big Lebowski, though, great movie. Definitely recommend it. A while ago, I decided to watch like the top 100 movies on IMDb, And Big Lebowski was one of them, and I had no idea what it was, but it was a pleasant surprise. Great movie. Number 5, Miracle, 2004, average rating of 89.48. Sports movies have a weakness. It's that they typically tell an unimaginable story. The story of 1980 U.S. men's hockey team was unimaginable. It also actually happened. Kurt Russell was brilliant as Herb Brooks, and the movie does a really good job of accurately telling one of the great sports stories in sports history. So this is a great movie. It's about the 1980s U.S. hockey team when they went to win gold and stuff like that. It's very well acted. It's very well made just in general. This is a fantastic movie. Highly recommended. I need to hurry up here. Number 4, Bull Durham. It's among the most quotable films ever written. Just this from Annie Savoy, played by Susan Sarandon, should make you want to fire it up right now. I believe in the Church of Baseball. I've tried all major religions and most of the minor ones. I worship Buddha, Allah, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, trees, mushrooms, Isadora Duncan. I know things more. For instance, there are 108 bees in the Catholic Rosary, and there are 108 stitches in a baseball. When I heard that, I gave Jesus a chance, but it just didn't work out between us. The Lord laid too much guilt on me. So, Bull Durham, another one of those great sports movies. It's a great baseball movie. If you haven't seen Bull Durham, see Bull Durham. It is a great baseball movie, and of course it has Kevin Costner in it. Do you see a pattern with Kevin Costner? Kevin Costner's in a sports movie. It's good. Just saying. Number 3, Hoop Dreams, 1994. Hoop Dreams is the best sports movie ever. Ranks among the great documentaries of any genre, following 2 basketball prodigies through high school. It's just the tip of the iceberg. The real genius is how it brilliantly chronicles issues of race, class, and education in a poor Chicago neighborhood. I have not seen this one. It's a documentary from 1994. Number 2, Raging Bull, 1980. People thought it was crazy to do a boxing movie after another one won the Oscar for Best Picture 4 years earlier, as if there was nothing new to bring to the table. But Raging Bull is a rare instance of a director, Martin Scorsese, cinematographer Michael Chapman, and actors Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, all at the absolute peak of their careers. It's one of the films I revisit most often, and I am blown away by something new with each viewing. The choice to make the film black and white is a definitive stroke of genius by Scorsese. It emphasizes the grit and beauty of the sport more than ever before, and Raging Bull holds up as a true masterpiece 40 years later. I have not seen Raging Bull, and I need to see it. I've heard it's so good. But I haven't seen it. I have not seen Raging Bull, sorry. Number 1, Rocky, 1976. Rocky 1, by the way. Average rating of 91.04. The cartoonish fight scenes don't come close to resembling an actual boxing match, but the movie did wonderfully capture the essence of the characters and promotional hype and make boxing so unique. In many ways, Rocky laid out the formula for underdog sports movies, grabbing an Oscar for Best Picture. So there you have it. That is the number 1 sports movie according to The Athletic, Rocky 1. Rocky 1, in my opinion, is a little slow. I don't think it's aged very well. In my opinion, it's very slow and very... I mean, you can tell that it didn't have a budget. You could tell. That's just my opinion. But it's still good. Still won an Oscar. But there you have it. Top 100 movies. We did it. We got through it. I haven't seen like 80% of them, though. But thank you for listening, everybody. If you like the podcast, please like, rate, and subscribe to it wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow me on Twitter at @Strickland_Josh. And we'll figure something out to talk about in the last segment on Thursday. We'll figure it out. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.